When you hear the name Stalingrad, you probably picture this brutal, grinding, last-ditch fight. But what if I told you that the story we all think we know, a desperate city just barely holding on, is only half the picture? Today we are going to pull back the curtain on the secret strategy that turned what looked like a last stand into one of the greatest military turning points in history. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How does a desperate, cornered defense, a last stand, somehow transform into a strategic masterpiece? Well, the answer is buried deep in the snow-covered ruins of a city on the Volga River. Okay, so to really get what made this so special, we have to start with the desperation. Let's go back to the streets of Stalingrad, a place of just absolute chaos and brutal, relentless fighting. The year is 1942. The German war machine has pushed incredibly deep into the Soviet Union, and now its entire focus is on Stalingrad. Soviet forces are getting hammered, pushed back block by bloody block. I mean, to anyone watching from the outside, it looks like a textbook case of an army on the very, very edge of collapse. And right here is where the story takes a massive turn. See, a standard defense is pretty simple. You just hold the line. That's your job. But behind the scenes, the Soviet high command was cooking up something completely different. Their goal wasn't just to stop the German army, it was to swallow it whole. This whole desperate defense, it was actually being designed to become a gigantic, inescapable trap. So that brings us to the secret at the very heart of this battle, a plan so audacious, so bold, that it could change the entire course of the war on the Eastern Front. Its codename was Operation Uranus. So what exactly was Operation Uranus? Well, it was a total flip of the script. The idea was to let the German 6th Army get completely bogged down in the brutal street fighting in Stalingrad, just fix them in place, while secretly building up these enormous Soviet horses on their weak, overstretched flanks way to the north and south of the city. The real goal was to punch right through those weak spots and meet up behind the German army, trapping them completely. And this is the part you really have to understand. While the whole world was watching this desperate struggle for a single city, the real objective had become something so much bigger. It wasn't about saving Stalingrad anymore. It was about destroying the army that was trying to take it. The city itself had become the bait. So after weeks and weeks of secret preparations and just unbelievably bloody defensive fighting, the moment finally came. On November 19th, 1942, right in the middle of a brutal Russian winter, the Soviets launched their counteroffensive. The trap was sprung. You can really see the four-part genius of the plan right here. First, the defense, which bleeds the German army and keeps all of its attention focused on the city. Second, that defense becomes the lure, pulling even more German forces into that urban meat grinder. Then, bam, the counterattack hits those weak flanks. And finally, the encirclement, where the two Soviet pincers just snap shut, an entire army trapped. This was it, the ultimate transformation. A fight that looked to all the world like a doomed last stand had, through incredible planning and sacrifice, become a textbook example of a perfect counterattack, a true military masterpiece. Now, pulling off Operation Uranus didn't just win a single battle. The consequences for the German war effort were catastrophic, and it fundamentally changed the dynamic of the entire war. And look, historians are pretty much unanimous on this. The Battle of Stalingrad wasn't just another fight. It stands as one of the most decisive battles of the entire Second World War. Its impact was immediate, and it was irreversible. The effect on the war is just staggering when you visualize it like this. Before Stalingrad, German momentum on the Eastern Front seemed completely unstoppable. After Stalingrad, that momentum was just shattered, gone. From this point on, the German army was on the defensive in the east, beginning a long retreat that would end in Berlin. So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. At Stalingrad, you have this desperate defense that was brilliantly turned into a trap. You see encirclement used as a devastating primary weapon. You see a last stand that becomes a counterattack masterpiece. And most importantly, you see the exact moment the entire momentum of the war on the Eastern Front shifted, for good. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. Stalingrad was a turning point, for sure. One born from desperation, incredible strategy, and immense sacrifice. It really makes you wonder, what is the anatomy of a true turning point? In history, in business, or even in our own lives. What does it really take to turn a desperate defense into a masterpiece?